Hi everyone, good to see you. Well, you know me, and I know you guys there behind the camera. Today I'm going to have a small, short part of this webinar on communication will be focused on PR, and I was asked by Conrad to have a little session on this. The reason I was asked, I assume, is because that I worked as a journalist for many years, for 10 years in Sweden, and also as a freelance in Liverpool. I also work now for Krav as the press officer, as the PR person here in Krav. So you're not going to become PR gurus or communications gurus by this presentation, not at all. It's on a very basic level. Okay, so any one of you knows a lot about communications, you might want to skip this, okay? But for the rest of you, I think it could be really interesting. Okay, today this presentation, as I said, we'll have a short slide on the basics, the very, very basics of communication. We will also then focus a little bit on PR, how it's used, what it does and how it works. And then we'll shift a little bit on to media and journalists, how that works, seeing that this is a little bit of specialty of mine, done a master's in politics and the mass media, basically how media is structured. We will then end this presentation with a group presentation, and then we'll all resume back at the moodle discussion board, okay? So any questions you have during this presentation, please park them, note them down, and we'll discuss them in the moodle board. Right, communication. The very essence of communication is the need to share, okay, and the will to listen. So, you want to share something, what to share, who do you want to share it with, and why do you want to share it? So what, who, why, I just wrote. You might not see it, but I wrote it there on the board. And we'll get back to these topics. So that is the very essence. That is why you're sitting here now watching a film of me and I'm talking to you. Yeah? And then there's noise. Okay? If I were to meet, you might not see it, but this is a picture. You also have this presentation on the Moodle board. So if you have a lot of noise, such as bad internet connection, you might not see this film, or the sound levels might be just too low, or you might be distracted by my earrings or something, then that is noise created. If I would meet this guy, and for you who might not see this picture, he's got forks and knives through his nose, he's got a lot of piercings, and if I would to meet this guy, that would immediately create a lot of noise. I would really have to focus on what he has to say instead of thinking whether the knives are hurting. Okay. So that is how we actually present something. I choose to make a film here today because I thought just putting a PowerPoint presentation on the Moodle board, it's a little bit boring when it comes to discussing communications. So I thought I also make a small film of myself making the presentation, and hopefully I haven't created more noise. Hopefully it's an added value. If not, just revert to the PowerPoint presentation. And also there's a context. Yeah, we are here because we are part of the Organic Leadership course. This guy I choose, you might not see him, but he's a news presenter on BBC, very well known. Tracy, you might know him quite well. And so it's all about context, and I choose the word when. Yeah, when you want to do this communication. So as you might not be able to see here, but I've written what, who, why, how, and when. The W's and the H, I call that. We will revert to them later. So that, as told you, it was only going to be one slide on the basics of communication, and this is really it. And now we will quickly move on to PR, yeah? And that is public relation. It could be a relationship that a person has towards its public. It could be of a product, of an organization such as CRAV, or a label such as CRAV. Could also be for a cause, say organic production. It could also be for a company. So it's all this, what kind of relation that this person or product have with its audience, with its public. That is public relation. And obviously what you want to do with PR is create a goodwill and a positive image towards this cause or organization, brand, product or person. Okay? So what does PR do? Yeah? Basically what you want to do, as I said, you want to create a nice image, but you also want to inform this audience or this target group. Say CRAV, we work towards a target group of LOHAS, the Angelina Jolies and Brad Pitts of this world, yeah? And so we want to inform them, we want to influence them so that they buy the CRAV certified products, in essence. And basically we shape market opinion by this. Yeah, and not to forget, PR is really, it's a value, it's a business. In CRAV and elsewhere, in all other organizations and companies, you can actually create a PR value. A PR value is counted on the time slots, editorial time slots of a TV show or a newspaper, and then you would say how much would it cost to buy advertising space and slots in these programs, and then it kind of reverts into a value, and that is the PR value. So it's a business, it really is. There's loads of PR firms, so this is not something to be taken lightly. It's actually, and I think that is, oh, it's not the next slide, but the very next slide, it's a great marketing tool. But before we go there, it's what PR cannot do, and this is important to remember, you know. If you have a faulty product or a cause that is that's not really worthwhile, then people will find that out, you know. I mean, you might take the example of Bill Clinton and the Lewinsky affair. He got really bad PR as it happened, but then even bad PR or a bad cause or bad person, if you like, can actually be persistent in PR and turn it towards a more favorable image, and I reckon actually Bill Clinton managed to do that. He was very, very persistent in his message that he did not kiss the girl. Okay, so that's one example of a person's public relation to the public. Okay, for instance, you might have really, really good intentions. We have a dairy company here in Sweden. They decided to climate compensate all the organic milk. And they did a very nice scheme of planting trees elsewhere in the world. And they were really happy with it, until media discovered that to actually climate compensate this milk, the trees has to stand at least 100 years, which obviously they hadn't, they were just planted, and there was also no guarantee that the trees would actually not be shot down before 100 years. And also on the communication in the package, they had used the word climate compensated in past tense. So obviously that created a lot of bad press, despite being quite a good cause and despite wanting to create good PR. So PR cannot, you know, guarantee positive coverage or outcome. Okay, so why is it important? Yeah. As if you compare the editorial space in a newspaper or in a TV show or radio to advertising space in these channels as well, there's far more credibility in the editorial content. Because historically, and we will criticize this a bit later on, but historically media and journalists are objective and they deliver truth, so therefore it's more credible and trustworthy. It's changing, I know, but generally, whereas paid advertising, paid spaces in these TV shows and radio isn't as credible. Okay, so that's basically what PR uses. I'm going to show one great example here. Actually, I won't show it here on the presentation, it just takes too much time. But I ask you to after this presentation, go back to this and click to the link. And what it is, it's a great, it's a Belgian, it is one of the greatest PR things last year, I say. It was a Belgian TV channel that was going to be launched, and this TV channel contained a lot of drama. They had a lot of drama and excitement. That was their message that they wanted to get across. So basically they created a scene where a lot of drama took place in a public space, and then they filmed this, and also they launched the film on social media, paid people to spread it, and it really got a lot of likes, and people talked about it in the social media. They talked about it so much that it actually entered the agenda of the traditional media, and therefore it created a lot of good PR, and the message of add more drama in your life by switching on this new TV channel really got across. I do recommend you to watch it. If we would have been here live, I would show it for you. Yeah. And as this film will indeed have shown you, PR is a great marketing tool. This TV channel really got across with its message, and it really got a good launch. Then they obviously have to keep it up. Good work. So, well, I'm not going to go through because it's so obviously PR as well as advertising, but PR cleverly used is actually driving sales and influence market opinion. And also, and we'll get to this later, PR can also be used to deflect criticism and combat all negative images. It's tougher, but it can be done, as I told you with the example of Bill Clinton. Okay, is it better than advertising? I won't stay so long on this one, but basically what PR can do and advertising can't do, it can reinforce a brand but not build it, okay? So advertising can really reinforce a brand, but it cannot build it, whereas PR have much more capabilities of doing that. And as I said earlier, paid media really lacks credibility. So how do you create good PR? I know I speak a bit fast, but I'm a bit worried that the battery on the camera will run out. So here you go. You can do the easy PR, say 10 new farmers turn to organic. Brilliant, easy PR, it happens. You could construct a PR, as we've seen with the Belgian TV channel. And you can also do paid PR, really. It's called advertorial, and it's where say, Krav would buy an editorial slot, and it would clearly state at the top of the newspaper that this is an advertorial. However, it's laid out and it's written as if it's a news article. And how do you do good PR? Well, basically you need a PR plan. Yeah? And this is where we will, I won't go through this in detail because it is fairly obvious, but just remember that the W's and the H, the what, the who, the why, the when, and the how. Okay? It's really not rocket science here. And also you need to know what's newsworthy. Okay? And this is also not rocket science, and this is why I made a quite wordy presentation, because I want you to be able to revert back on it. If you have a product or a course, if you want to say launch a children's book, yeah? You need to do a PR strategy and a PR plan for that. When will I launch it? What is the main message? Is it buy this book? Or is it this book will really revolutionize how your kids look upon food, you know, or whatever? Yeah. This is a bad example with the book, but if you take Krav, for instance, or organic production, there is an inherent conflict with conventional production and the use of pesticides, for instance, and that could be used. Krav has chosen actively not to polarize that much, but it can be done, and sometimes it is done very effectively. Also, personalize the information. If you can bring out a farmer presenting the product, if you can bring out a farmer saying how nice it is to stop using chemical pesticide and grow things organically, then that is a really good way to present, to use PR. Okay, so now I've said I've worked as a PR person here in Craft for 4 years, and before that, over 10 years, I worked as a journalist, and I am very much a journalist, so it really makes me a bit sad to answer this question. Media, isn't media objective? We really thought it was, and that's how it started once in a time. And this is also what I did my MA in, and the brief answer, and I'm all going to summarize my MA here on one slide. The brief answer is really no. Media is not objective, because there's no such thing as one truth. There's facts, yeah, there's difference. Okay, we're not going to go into the philosophical arguments here, but media isn't objective, and these are the reasons. At the moment, we're not talking about the media 20 years or 30 years ago. We're talking about media today, traditional media. And what's happening, and also in regards to social media, there's an infotainment, there's a dumbing down of existing media. There might very well be some really good examples of great media. They are, I know them, you know. But what this creates is that the majority of media is dumbing down, is lowering the levels of knowledge, if you like, because they are more interested in getting advertising in the newspapers. You know, to put it very simply and black and white. So you have this infotainment, dumbing down, and that also means that the media gets fragmentized. Say that the target group, LOAS, we've been talking about, some of them might really disregard traditional mainstream media and just look at their channels when they want to, because media is also becoming more fragmentized. Yeah. So people are watching what they're interested in. The easiest way to describe this is the newspaper. When it started to have one piece that's news, one little section that's about sports, one for culture, and one for arts. And really, then you can pick and choose what you want. The financial is not together with general news, for instance, which is very interesting, you know. So media is becoming fragmentized. It's a tough word, that one. And also there's a 24/7 news coverage, and there's an also with the World Wide Web, there's actually an unlimited, infinitive space to fill. And this, you know, cleverly used by clever PR people, this is where it's really easy to come in. Because media have less resources, and they have so much more space to fill with good content or infotainment. Yeah, and this is essence really. Journalism is really not cost effective. The people actually getting money to newspaper is the people who sells advertising. Okay, so journalism in its essence is actually not cost effective, and it's not delivering money, which is obviously the reasons why. If we look at this last point here, who owns media? They own media because they want to make money of it. And I do recommend you, just briefly, to go to Columbia Journalism Review, cgr.org/resources, and that is a very good list on how big media corporates, which media they own and not. So I recommend that. I'm going to leave it here. I could go on for hours about this interesting topic, but I'll leave this. But it's important to actually bear in mind when you speak about beer, it is very much possible because of these facts. So cleverly used PR could really take advantage of this. Okay, because of time I will skip this, but I just want you to be very much aware of spin. I would say it's more or less the same as PR, but it's more politically used. Okay, so please read these articles that are linked to here. And then we have an anyway moment. PR is happening now, and for smaller organizations, which I think we all somehow represent, and we're fighting for what we think is a very good cause, then PR is a very great tool to get across. We don't have huge advertising budgets. We might have brands, but we have another core value, added value to a brand, and then that's much easier to portray using PR instead of paid advertising. Right, going to turn to when bad PR happens, and this is also where later you will do your group exercise on. Bad PR means that you have to react to bad press. Okay, so it's reactive communication. The other PR I've been talking about is possibilities of proactive communication. And when you're in a situation having to respond, then you have to respond very fast and very accurate. And before you do this, you have to really gauge the risks, you know, and the coming steps. What happens if we react this way or this way? And also my experience is that when you react, you also have to portray yourself as you're actually acting, you're taking some action. So that is key. And it might be a bit abstract now, but remember these: speed, accuracy, and taking action. That they are key words, and you need to bear them in mind for your group exercise. And here comes, yeah? And it's very hard to read here, so I do recommend you to look at the PowerPoint presentation. I think it's slide 18, but I'll read it out shortly for you. A radio station calls and says that they have done analysis on organically certified muesli. The oats in this muesli contains low levels of chemical pesticides, and it's much lower than the guidelines for conventional food, but yet this product can no longer be sold as organic. And it doesn't have to be withdrawn from the shelf, but it can no longer be sold as organic. So yeah, it has to be withdrawn from the shelf, sorry that. And you work for, say, an organic label like Krav, and where the certification is done by a third party. So I need you in your group to think what you're going to say to the journalist, how you say it, who says it, when you say it, and where you say it, what channels, social media, Facebook, press release, interview, and why do you say this, and what are you hoping to achieve by reacting? Because you could do Bill Clinton and say, no, I did not kiss the girl, and then just remain silent. That is also an option. Basically, you need to think, what do I want to achieve here? And here are the groups for you. Okay, so group 1 is Petros, Aman, Natalia, Nitya. Group 2, Ronald, Claudia, Marian. And group 3, Paddy, Jose, Lucy, and Tracy. So discuss via Skype or the Moodle board, maximum 20 minutes, and then post your short answer to these questions in the discussion forum, and I shall see you there. And then I shall see you in Nürnberg in some months' time. Bye bye.